All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. It's episode 60. Switching focus. It's Friday. It's July 4th weekend. And that means it's time to stop talking about college baseball. Start talking about college football. Most exciting time of the year for me. Love me some college football. On the show today, we'll talk a little bit about Texas recruiting. It's starting to heat up. It's been a year so far. Leading up to the last couple weeks, hasn't been a lot of excitement going on with Texas recruiting. It's starting to get really exciting. We're going to talk about the QB room. Might be one of the best quarterback rooms in the country. I know Jaden Daniels will argue with me on that. That's fine. We're going to break down Week 1 opponent Rice Owls. And then we'll have a special announcement about the Horn Takes podcast travel and roadshow. But let's get into this. Recruiting roundup. So a couple of really big recruiting weekends for Texas over the last couple weekends. The really big one, June 23rd through the 25th. Let's talk about who all was in town. A lot of big stars, a lot of big players, a lot of high-profile recruits in Austin. Terry Bussey, 5-star athlete out of Texas, 5'10", 180-pound speedster. It's a guy that could play multiple positions, probably ends up being a slot-type guy in college. He's down to OU, Texas, Bama, LSU, and Aggie. He actually announced that as his final 5 today, just before the show started. Colin Simmons, 5-star edge. This is the guy right here. This is, depending on who you look at, this is the number 1 edge in the country, number 2 overall prospect in the country. I've been watching Colin Simmons play in the state championship game for the last couple years. This kid, 6'3", 225 pounds, just an absolute disruptor off the edge. It's phenomenal to watch this dude play. If the play goes to his side of the field, the play is over. He's an absolute menace. He's a guy you can build a whole defense. He is like you talk about like Vince Young being a generational talent, Trevor Lawrence being a generational talent at the quarterback position, Bijan Robinson being a generational talent at the running back position. Colin Simmons is a generational talent coming off the edge. He's not as big as Jadeveon Clowney, but he's the same type of dude as Jadeveon Clowney. Just ridiculous athleticism. He's down to Bama, Miami, Texas, Florida, and LSU. But right now, it really looks like it's a LSU-Texas battle. And depending on who you talk to, we'll get into this a little later, there's not much of a battle going on anymore. Kobe Black, another guy that was in town, 5-star cornerback out of Texas, 6 foot, 190 pounds. This guy, to me, plays much longer and much bigger than a 6 foot, 190-pound player. He just looks bigger than that on film to me. I don't know if those numbers are right. But he loves to press, and that's what Texas wants to do. Texas wants to play press coverage with their cornerbacks. There'll be a bunch of cornerbacks and a bunch of defensive backs on this list, and the guys that are going to play corner out of this list, that's a must. They all need to be able to press, and looking at their film, they all do want to press. He's down to Bama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, and LSU. Dominant McKinley, big 5-star defensive line out of Lafayette, Louisiana. Athletic with room to grow. This dude does not look like he was 6'5", 290 pounds. He looks like a normal dude, except he kills everybody. He's so athletic. He had 2 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown last year, and it wasn't no easy touchdown. It was a long touchdown. This is another kid. He would be a huge get for Texas. He seems to be down to Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, A&M, and LSU. You'll notice a theme. It's the same schools over and over and over again. And kudos to Brent Venables for having his program in the discussion with a lot of these recruits. I think most of these guys are defensive recruits. Obviously, Brent Venables is a defensive guy. He's got some capital out there. Just like Texas, though, he's going to have to do something on the field. You got Selman Bridges, 4-star cornerback. This is a big kid, 6'3", 175, 180 pounds. Great length, obviously. Amazing ball skills. Arkansas, TCU, Texas, USC, and Bama in the mix. And then a whole host of IMG Academy guys were in town. Jarrett Gibson, 4-star running back. Arguably the number one running back in the country. Out of Bradenton, Florida. 5'10", 200 pounds. Speed, power. He's got it all. He's a Texas, Georgia, Miami, Florida, Bama guy, except he's not. He committed to Texas while he was on this visit. Really outstanding pickup. That'll be the second year in a row that the University of Texas and Tashard Choice have landed not only their number one prospect, but the number one running back prospect in the country. And both of those guys right out of Florida, Miami, Florida State, and parts of the SEC's backyard. Daniel Calhoun, big 4-star offensive tackle. This dude, 6'6", 355 pounds. Kyle Flood wants big humans. Steve Sarkisian wants big humans. This dude is an absolute monster of a big human. He's down to Bama, Auburn, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas. July 5th announcement. It's looking like Georgia. Texas got a shot, though. There's some buzz that Texas is in a lot better shape than they think they are. I don't know. We'll see. July 5th, he announces. Wardell Mack, 4-star cornerback out of Marrero, Louisiana, 5'11", 170 pounds. He can play wide. He can play on the edge, or he can play in the nickel, which is great. You got to like versatility out of a defensive back. Lots of speed, loves to press. He's a Florida, Florida State, Texas, LSU, Bama guy. Here's another big one. Jordan Johnson-Rubel, 4-star safety out of Bradenton, Florida, 5'10", 180 pounds. This guy plays much bigger. He's an absolute headhunter. If you go watch his film, everybody else, when he hits them, is going backwards. This dude is a thudder. He likes to smack people. He's Michigan, Ohio State, TCU, Texas, and USC. And he's announcing this Saturday, July 2nd. Saturday ain't July 2nd. Sunday, July 2nd. Or maybe it's, hell, I don't know. He's announcing this weekend. That's all I know. A lot of people think he's a Texas get. Corian Gibson, 4-star cornerback, 6 foot, 170 pounds. Another versatile guy that can play both on the edge or in the nickel. Clemson, Texas, Bama, Ohio State, and TCU. A lot of people think he's a Clemson guy. We'll see. Zena Umeozulu, 4-star edge out of Allen, Texas. This dude, 6'4", 200 pounds. I only got to see his sophomore film. I couldn't find any film of his junior year. But this guy is super athletic and really, really raw. He's one of those good projects that you like to have. He's down to Oklahoma, Texas, Aggie, LSU, and Oregon. There's crystal balls in for him to go to Texas. Parker Livingstone, 4-star wide receiver, big guy, circus catch guy, good speed. He kind of reminds me of Jordan Shipley and Jackson Shipley, just his game. Good speed, good hands, can make really circus-type catches. He doesn't have not exactly the same type of quickness in tight spaces, but you give him a little bit of room, and this guy has the speed to go the distance. I really like his film. Daniel Cruz, 3-star interior offensive lineman. I don't know what makes this guy a 3-star according to Horns 247 Sports, and I'm on Horns 247. So I don't know why Horns 247 and 247 Sports have him at a 3-star. He's a 4-star on most services, and he's every bit of a 4-star. This dude, he plays from the second the ball is snapped all the way through the whistle, which you got to love for an offensive lineman. That's the kind of dude that will frustrate the hell out of everybody he goes up against. His feet are so good for a kid his size and that plays interior. He's a guard in high school. He's going to be a center at Texas, and he's a Texas commit. He just committed earlier this week. Excited about him. I'm an old offensive lineman. I love offensive linemen. I think offensive linemen make the game go. defensive linemen make the game go. So you're going to hear me get really excited often and a lot about these big guys that Texas is recruiting. One of the biggest issues when Steve Sarkisian got to Texas was just the lack of good quality players and certainly quality depth at the offensive line and defensive line. He has done an outstanding job along with Kyle Flood and Bo Davis to build up those two units. And now they're starting to develop some of these guys. I expect both units to be very, very good this year and heading into the SEC in 2024. Terrence Hibbler is a 3-star defensive lineman out of Lexington, Mississippi that was in town. He's a Mississippi State commit, and Mississippi State tried their damnedest to get him not to go visit Texas, and he said, no, I'm going to go visit Texas. He's got a really nice frame. He's really raw and really athletic. I don't know. I haven't heard much about since the visit. Obviously, it had to be a good sign for Texas that he wanted to come visit. Who knows what will happen? Jaden Jackson, another one of those IMG guys out of Bradenton, Florida. This dude is a 3-star as well. He's 6'2", 300 pounds. And, man, his first move is lightning in a bottle. I don't know that I've ever seen a big man move the way this guy moves, and he's an absolute wrecking ball. If you get a chance, go watch Jaden Jackson's film and just go, holy shit. Like, how is this dude a 3-star? I don't know how recruiting services evaluate, and certainly they're looking at hundreds and hundreds of kids. They're going to make mistakes. I feel like 3 stars is way too low for this dude. Go watch his film. It's just, he's wrecking shop the whole time. He's Florida, Miami, Ohio State, Texas, and Oklahoma are his kind of final 5. TJ Lindsey is another 3-star defensive lineman from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. 6'3", 291. This dude played a lot of edge at that size, and he did it well. He's athletic, versatile. Obviously, I don't think he'll be an edge in college, but who knows? We've seen some other big kids like that move to the Division I level and still maintain edge position. So who knows what he can do? He's Auburn, Miami, Texas, A&M, and Arkansas. That's kind of his final 5 schools. Alex January, Texas Legacy, 3-star defensive lineman. I've seen him as a 4-star in other places. 6'3", 325 pounds. He's an absolute space eater, very powerful. He's a guy like Mount Cody, not as big, obviously, but you can't move him. He can take on double teams. Florida State, LSU, Texas, Texas Tech, and Miami seem to be his choices. Trey Owens was in town, 3-star QB, 6'5", 205, big, and throws a really nice ball. But he has a long release. I think that's probably why he's a 3-star. With a little improvement, he can move up to the rankings. I could see him being a 4-star in the final rankings. He's a Texas commit. He was one of the first guys to commit to this 2024 class. So let's break down who are the current commits. You got Michael Kern, 3-star punter. Trey Owens, 3-star quarterback we just talked about. Santana Wilson's a 4-star cornerback. Lot of cornerbacks. They are looking at a lot of defensive backs in this class. I like it. You know, you looked at the pass defense last year. It wasn't great. A lot of that can be fixed by a really good pass rush, but they're looking for guys on the back end with athleticism, durability, and ball skills. Got to get more turnovers out of the secondary. Some of these guys have all of those things wrapped into one single package. Santana Wilson is long. You got to like a long cornerback to compete with these long wide receivers you're seeing. You're seeing all these really, 6'3", skinny, just basketball player almost guys playing wide receiver. You got to have guys like that covering these guys. So I like the direction that the cornerback recruiting is going. Freddie Dubose, he's a 4-star wide receiver. He's versatile. This guy, he does it all. Wide receiver, slot. He does the return game very well. A big key for a guy like him is he's a blocker. A lot of these star athletes, they don't want to block. He likes to block. He's got good size and speed. Really good pickup for Steve Sarkisian. Then Christian Clark, 4-star running back. Couldn't find any film on him, but he's Tashard Choice's number 2. I'll trust Tashard Choice. If Coach Choice says he's good, he's good. Texas lands their top 2 running back targets for the 2024 class. And then over the weekend, Jarrett Gibson, obviously we talked about him. And then Nate Kibble, big 4-star interior offensive lineman out of Atascocita, Texas. He was a tackle in high school, big, powerful dude. I feel like he's a project. He needs to work on his feet. He needs to work on his bend, his flexibility, and his hips. But clearly, he's a big, strong kid. Move him to the interior. I think that's a step in his development that has to be taken. I don't think he's a tackle in college, but a nice pick up there. A lot of guys wanted him. He was down to, he was in LSU, A&M. A lot of schools wanted him. So obviously, you can't necessarily look at the stars. What you really need to look at is the offer list, and especially who's still recruiting people. In today's day and age, a lot of these coaches are throwing out tons of offers to guys that are really young, and then a lot of them will continue to develop. Some of them will regress. If coaches at these big schools are still after these kids, that's what you need to look for, not necessarily those stars. So out of that whole list of guys that was here and kind of who's left, big name guys, who's Texas really looking good with? Parker Livingstone, he's going to come to Texas. There's a crystal ball, and there's several crystal balls in for him. Guy named Deshaun Warner, 3-star edge out of Goodyear, Arizona, 6'3", 225 pounds. Body-wise, looks a lot like Colin Simmons. Probably just not as refined, not as athletic. He's down to Texas and Washington. Jordan Washington's a 3-star tight end out of Texas, 6'4", 215. He's a versatile kid. He can play in the slot. He can play the tight end position, the H-back position. Really good blocker. He's down to Texas, Bama, and A&M, and there is a crystal ball in for him for Texas as well. Melvin Hills, 3-star defensive line out of Lafayette, Louisiana, is another guy that had a really good visit, 6'3", 270 pounds. Ole Miss and Texas. I don't know. We'll see what happens with big Melvin Hills. Jaden Jackson, who I said that 3-star defensive lineman. I love Jaden Jackson, man. If Jaden Jackson commits to Texas, I will be absolutely stoked. Wrecking ball. Huge. Go watch the film. Alex January, he's another guy we talked about. Kobe Black, Colin Simmons, Zena, this is a tough name. Tough name for me. Zena Umeozulu. And I don't know if he's the cousin of Neto Umeozulu, Umeozulu. Big Neto signed with that really historic Texas offensive line class a couple years ago. He was one of those guys. I don't know if they're cousins. I know Neto has a cousin that plays defensive end, but I thought he was out of the Washington, D.C. area. So maybe Zena used to be in Washington. Now he's in Texas. I don't know. And then Terry Bussey, another guy who wasn't on this trip, but a lot of people feel like Texas has, or at least Texas leads for his commitment. There's a lot of crystal balls in for this guy. Is Ryan Wingo, 5-star wide receiver out of St. Louis, Missouri, 6'2", 205. And this dude, man, does he look big. He looks a lot bigger than 6'2", 205 pounds. He's another versatile guy. You look at return game, slot, wide out, just the different things he can do. He can get down the field. He can take a short screen, and he's quick enough and fast enough to turn that into a big play. He's definitely a down-the-field guy. He's Georgia, Michigan, Mississippi, Texas, and Bama. Tons and tons of smoke about Colin Simmons and Kobe Black from this big recruiting weekend. There's a lot of talk that those guys are silent commits. They're coming to Texas. That would be huge. Texas can use all the 5-star defensive talent they can get, and these are two really big difference makers for Texas. Both of those guys have crystal balls for Texas. For those of you that don't know what a crystal ball is, these recruiting analysts, and I don't know when it started, maybe a few years ago, instead of just saying, I think so-and-so is going to come to so-and-so or go to such and such, they put in these crystal ball picks now, and they do them with a certain level of confidence. Sometimes you'll see them 100%. Sometimes you'll see them medium. Sometimes you'll see them a 6. I don't know what the breakdown is. They're all different, but especially when some of the national guys start putting out crystal balls for people, and obviously recruiting's fluid, right? they're not always right, and guys change their mind. But when you start to see the national guys do it, there's a pretty good hit right there. And both of these guys have crystal balls from the national guys. So we'll see how that ends up. If Sark can land a lot of these guys in this class, it's going to be another top 5 class. That's going to be the third top 5 class in a row. And that's really what Texas needs, is consistently high recruiting classes. And we've talked about it on the show before, not just good recruiting classes with high star counts and high average stars and all that stuff. You need to get guys in the right spots. And man, is Steve Sarkisian on the right track with that. They went out and signed that huge offensive line class because they had to. They had almost no bodies on campus. They couldn't even play a spring game because they didn't have enough guys that could play offensive line. They literally didn't have 10 guys that could line up and play offensive line in a spring game. So they went out, they signed this huge class, and not only was it a big class, but it was a class full of really highly rated offensive linemen. The class last year, not as big, not as highly touted, but some really good talent in there. And then you're seeing them followed up this year on the offensive line with a couple of big commits already. There's still some more guys out there that they have a good shot with. Calhoun is one of those guys. Again, he commits July 5th. We'll see how that goes for Texas. But a lot of really quality talent along the offensive line for Texas now. Lots of depth there. Same thing on the defensive line. They've signed a lot of really, really quality guys. And if they can get Colin Simmons and some of these defensive tackles we just talked about, man, I'm excited about it. That is the key to any football at almost any level. You know, in junior high, pee-wee football, you can definitely outrun people with speed without having good blocking. Early on in high school, you can probably outrun people without good blocking if you've got good speed. You start getting into varsity athletics, college football, professional football, you absolutely have to have big dudes that can make holes and big dudes that can close holes and guys that can get off the edge and rush quarterbacks. If you don't have that, you cannot be successful. If you look at the SEC over the last, 15 years that they've been so good, they have had multiple guys on the field at offensive line and defensive line get drafted very highly in the NFL draft. That's why those teams are so good. They dominate the line of scrimmage. That's how you win football in D1. That's certainly how you win football in the SEC. I'm excited to see Sark, Bo Davis, Kyle Flood working together, getting these guys coming in. This is going to be a really good class. Now let's talk about the quarterbacks. So we said at the top of the show, this might be one of the best quarterback rooms in the country. It certainly has to be top 10. If anybody wants to argue with me about that, let's go. There's no way there's 10 better quarterback rooms than this one at the University of Texas. It all starts at the top with Quinn Ewers, redshirt sophomore. Everybody knows Quinn Ewers is ultra talented. This is a kid that reclassed. He should have been a true freshman last year. He reclassed, committed to Ohio State, got in a couple games, got in one game, I think, handed the ball off a couple times. Never moved his way up the depth chart, which is understandable. Ohio State is also a school that has generally really good quarterback rooms. Go back and look at the year their last national championship. It ended up being their third string quarterback that took them through the playoffs to win the whole thing. Quinn played in 10 games last year. We all know he missed most of the Alabama game with a clavicle injury, missed all of UTSA, Texas Tech, and West Virginia games. Completed 58% of his passes. Not great. Had a 132 QB rating. That's pretty good. It's decent. Threw for 2,177 yards for 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. For most of the season last year, he had really bad footwork, and he looked like a freshman. He looked like a really talented freshman, though. Some games, holy hell, that Alabama game was looking really, really good till he got hurt. He threw a lot of really nice passes. stayed in the pocket under pressure and delivered the ball. Xavier Worthy dropped one in the end zone on him. He was having a hell of a game in that Alabama game. And then he comes back after being out for basically 4 weeks. Remember, he got hurt in the first quarter of that game. He was out for basically 4 weeks and just drops a dime on Oklahoma. 3 touchdowns, I think, maybe 4 touchdowns in that game. But a lot of really just surgical passing in that game against Oklahoma. So he took his lumps. He ended up the season. He goes out to, they go to Stillwater. Just has an awful game. He threw the ball 5 million times in that game inexplicably. There was reports that he had an injured finger, couldn't really grip the ball, which is weird. I don't know why we threw the ball so much, especially after that first half where we ran the ball right down Oklahoma State's throat. But it is what it is. He gets the L there. He struggled in other games. He really struggled in the Baylor game, the season finale at home. But then he goes out and has a pretty decent game against Washington, despite the fact that, again, there was more drops down the field and more misplayed deep balls down the field by Texas wide receivers. I think he threw for like 370, something like that against Washington. I know it was over 300. I might be getting some numbers confused there, but a pretty good game for Quinn Ewers in the Alamo Bowl. And so we jump into the offseason, and Quinn Ewers, if you saw him last fall, long hair, unkept beard, he looked like a country singer. He looked like a dude you might see at a state fair or a county fair, like just trying to make a living singing country songs. And Quinn decides he's gonna start taking things a little more seriously. So his appearance changes, cuts his hair, shaves the beard. He looks like a totally different kid. In his preparation, he's made obvious strides in preparing. I think at some point, you know how kids are. They always think, especially ones that are talented, they think, I can do anything. I'm invincible. And then you get to a higher level of life or a higher level of sport, and you start to realize, and the smart ones will realize, yeah, I'm not ready for this. I've got to do better to prepare myself. And I think whether Steve Sarkisian or AJ Milwee had the conversation with him, I don't know. Whether any conversation happened, I don't know. Whether it was just a conversation with Quinn Ewers and himself, I don't know. But he's made some changes in this offseason, and I think it's going to really pay off for him and the Texas Longhorns. He's put effort into his preparation. He went out to some camp. I don't know the exact name of it. It was over in I believe it was over in Louisiana. Maybe like the Manning camp. Probably the Manning camp. Performed really well at the Manning camp here recently. Performed better than a lot of, I think he was rated 4th or 5th out of all the D1 quarterbacks that were at that camp. He played well in the Texas spring game. Nothing flashy, just there. He has tons of weapons around him, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference maker. And I think that's probably, for a lot of Division I quarterbacks that are fresh out of high school, I think that's probably the toughest mental place for them to get is, I don't have to go out and win the game. I don't have to be the guy anymore. I've got all the pieces around me. All I need to do is just deliver the football, protect the football, and these guys are going to go make me look great. And there's definitely the pieces around him. Definitely. You got A.D. Mitchell. You got Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, J.T. Sanders. It's almost embarrassing. Isaiah Nair, who's a guy that's going to be, who knows what ends up happening. Hopefully his recovery continues to go well and he can see some time on the field this year. He was going to be the deep threat last year before he got hurt in fall camp. I think not having a guy like that in the offense last year certainly made it harder on Quinn Ewers and made it harder on the Texas Longhorns. It made Steve Sarkisian change up his whole, thought process for the season. Xavier Worthy had to become the deep guy then, and that's not really his game. We've talked about that on the show. So all the pieces are there. And there's a bunch of new guys coming in that are young, outstanding athletes, showed out in the spring game. DeAndre Moore, Jonte Cook. I think the over-under for Quinn Ewers this year is 3,500 yards. That's the number I'm setting. Which that's just 389 yards off of the single-season record for Texas football, held by Colt McCoy, set in 2008. I think he's going over 3,500 yards. See what happens. But again, the weapons are all there. The offensive line is going to be improved, so the running game should be better. You got big Kelvin Banks at the left tackle protecting him. You got big, can't remember his name, at the right tackle position. I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to be running for his life next year. I think if you looked at the offensive line last year, on the edge, really good. The closer you got to the center, the more it broke down. Not consistently, but it was there. And when it did break down, it caused a lot of problems. If that can improve, and if that can be consistently good, man, the sky's the limit for Quinn Ewers. And I think it's a mental thing, too. I think he's got to continue to have that mindset of, I don't have to win this all by myself. I got all these weapons around me. We'll see what happens. Malik Murphy, redshirt freshman. This is a guy, I really like Malik Murphy. I've talked about it on the show multiple times. I was doing a podcast last football season, and in the middle of a sentence, I just stopped and said, and I don't know why. I don't know why I did it. But I was in the middle of a discussion about something, probably somewhat related, the quarterback position. And I said, you know what? You know who can spin it? Malik Murphy. And at the time, I don't think a lot of people knew who Malik Murphy really was. Malik Murphy is a guy that was a 5-star prospect early on in his recruiting cycle. You had a COVID year and you had an injury that really sidetracked him and sort of kept him down in the rankings, kept him out of the camp circuit and, all these things that these big-time quarterbacks go and do to keep their name out there and to get their name out there and to bump those recruiting ratings. He didn't get a chance to do those things. But he is ridiculously talented. His arm can do anything that Quinn Ewers' arm can do, maybe even better than Quinn Ewers can do it. I think in that same conversation with myself and you guys out there that are listening to the podcast, I said I thought Malik Murphy's going to be a transfer guy. There is no way he's staying at Texas. He is too talented. He could go start right now on a lot of, lower level D1 teams. Not Power 5 conference teams. No doubt in my mind. He had a really, really good spring game this year. He played better in the spring game than Quinn Ewers did, and I know you have to look at who they're playing with, who they're playing against. Malik Murphy got to play against a lot of second-string, third-string guys. So it's not exactly apples to oranges, but if you look at the performance, it was really good. He throws a really nice, on-time, catchable downfield ball. Pretty accurate. And he has a big arm. Big arm for all the timing stuff. Malik Murphy ends up staying. He says, I'm staying at Texas. I want to play for Coach Steve Sarkisian. I want to be developed by A.J. Milwee. That's a huge deal for Texas. That's been something that Texas hasn't been able to do when Charlie Strong was the coach, something Texas hasn't been able to do when Tom Herman was the coach, was keep quarterbacks in the fold. There's been a lot of Texas quarterbacks that have left Texas, gone on to other schools, and had really good years. Some of them have been drafted. Some of them have played in Rose Bowls and won Pac-12 championships. And those are all guys that Texas just couldn't keep on campus because they didn't want to wait their turn. Because I guess for those guys, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. The investment to stay there and wait to get their shot under those coaches wasn't worth it. For Malik Murphy, staying at Texas and being developed by Steve Sarkisian and A.J. Milwee is worth it. And I think Malik Murphy can be a guy that steps in. Let's say Quinn Ewers has a good year this year. A lot of people are expecting it. I'm expecting it. I think the NFL is expecting it. This is a guy that really hasn't even played a whole season, and the part of the season that he played, he hasn't played well or great, let's say. Maybe not even good. But the NFL absolutely loves this guy's arm talent. So if Quinn Ewers goes out this season and Texas goes, let's say, 10 wins, 11 wins, major bowl game, and Quinn Ewers is a catalyst for all of that, he's gone. He's going to get drafted. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, yep, and Arch Manning's going to be the starter the next year. Nope, I don't think so. I think Malik Murphy is a guy. You look at Malik Murphy, who at that point, let's say Quinn Ewers gets drafted next year. You're looking at a guy, Malik Murphy, that will be in his third year in the program under Steve Sarkisian and A.J. Milwee. Third year in the system. Ultra talented. Malik Murphy's the guy that can bridge that gap between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning and do it to the tune of the same type of season. I legit think, talent-wise, those two guys could be, back-to-back playoff contender type quarterbacks. And I'm talking about Quinn and I'm talking about Malik Murphy. So I'm excited as hell that Malik Murphy decided to stay at Texas. I hope he gets to play. I hope Texas beats Rice so bad in week 1 that we get to see Malik Murphy in the second half of that game. And Steve Sarkisian is going to have him throwing the ball. He's going to try to get him ready in some game time situations because, as we've seen, you're one play away at any time. We're all one play away. Yeah, I had cornea surgery. That brings us to Arch Manning. Big pickup for Sark. He's depending on when you looked at his recruitment, he was the number 1 recruit, perfect 5-star, 1.0, or however they did, 100 ranking. The interesting thing about Arch Manning, let's take a step back. So I start hearing all this buzz about Arch Manning, and I knew exactly who it was just by his name, right? Everybody should have. So I go out and I start watching some film on this kid, and I'm like, man, I don't know. He's playing at a private school in Louisiana. He's like the biggest kid on the field. I mean, it looked like watching his film in high school looked like just watching a bunch of kids playing in a playground, and obviously the biggest, fastest kid is the best kid. And that's what Arch Manning looked like on film. That's not a knock on him. That's just what it looked like to me. Was the competition? If he was playing in the competition was just not the same thing that you see a lot of quarterbacks play against. Like, he's not playing Texas high school 5A or 6A football. He's playing private school, and he's the biggest kid out there. The other thing is he went to no camps. He just didn't want to do it. And a lot of people say, well, he's trying to protect himself. He's really not that good. Other people say, well, why would you do that? You're already the number one rated quarterback. You're getting recruited by all the top programs in the country. What is the purpose of going to all these camps? Just focus on your academics, focus on your team. So I don't necessarily see that as a knock, but what I do say, and what I said at the time was, I just don't know if we know about Arch Manning. He's got the pedigree. He's got the pedigree. He's probably got the mental makeup. Could you imagine your uncles being Super Bowl champions and MVPs? And like, imagine the conversations they have surrounding football just at family gatherings. Like, imagine the level of insight that Arch Manning has grown up around. Oh, by the way, his grandfather is also a Super Bowl champion. So Arch Manning has grown up living it. He knows what you have to do to be a quarterback, a successful quarterback. But again, there's the physical side of football, right? And he's obviously a big kid, 6'4", like 215 pounds. But I don't think we knew what he could really do based on the competition he played. And so some people raised that question. I raised that question. A lot of Longhorn fans didn't like that question. And I don't necessarily blame them, but I just like to keep it real. I just like to look at the truth of things. And the truth of the matter is we don't know, and we still don't know, a lot about what Arch Manning can do. But the funny thing about his recruitment was, before Texas really got in the mix and before it started looking like Texas was going to be the place for Arch Manning, it looked like it was going to be Georgia or Alabama. Man, those guys couldn't talk enough about how good Arch was and how he was coming to Georgia or he was going to Bama. The second he committed to Texas, all of a sudden, oh, he ain't that good. He ain't that good. If he ain't coming to Georgia or he ain't going to Bama, he ain't that good. No competition, da-da-da, all the stuff we just talked about. But he came into Texas with a lot of ridiculous expectations. I can't. The last time I remember a quarterback coming to Texas with the level of ridiculous expectations that Arch Manning has had heaped upon him by the Texas fan base was Chris Sims. And there was a lot of Texas fans that were talking about Arch is going to start this first year. No, he ain't. His family doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. Steve Sarkisian doesn't want to. The plan is for him to redshirt. It always was for him to redshirt. This guy, if Arch Manning has to play a football game for the University of Texas this year, something went horribly wrong. All Texas fans should be praying that Arch Manning never steps on the field as a Texas Longhorn this year, except maybe at the end of the game to hand the ball off. I don't know. We'll see if that happens for Arch. But you got all these ridiculous Horn fan expectations, and now the expectations for him from the college football world have even increased. It's like the pack smelled blood, and now they want to jump on this kid and run this kid down because he didn't pick Georgia or he didn't pick Bama. You look at a lot of pundits, you look at a lot of these college football analysts, they talk about the quarterback room at Texas. They never mention Malik Murphy. They always talk about Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Then there was the whole spring game. It wasn't great. But you know what Arch did in that spring game that impressed me? He didn't try to make plays where he knew there wasn't plays to be made. He just got rid of the ball. And yeah, ultimately, if you look at it from a statistics perspective, it was a failure of a day. But I think Arch Manning learned a lot about the speed of the game. Remember, he played at a tiny-ass private school last year in Louisiana. And we're not talking IMG Academy private school that plays against all the best schools in the area in Florida. We're not talking about Mater D or Mater Day or however the hell you say that shit out in California. We're not talking about some of these big-time private school football factory places. He just played at a tiny-ass private school in Louisiana. And then all of a sudden he wound up in a spring game against some of the best athletes in the country, and it didn't look so good. And a lot of people, including a lot of Texas fans, were just kind of like in shock by this. I've said it before. The jump from high school to college football is absolutely ridiculous, and it doesn't matter what level you played at in high school and what level you were going to play at in college. It is a huge jump. The speed of the game is way faster. The ability of the people you're playing against, the type of athlete you're playing against. In high school, you might play a really good player, depending on the area you live in and your classification. You might play another college-worthy type player. And I'm talking head up. I'm not talking about the other team has some college-type players. That probably happens a lot, especially in Texas. But you're not going up directly against elite high school talent that much. Maybe 3-4 games a year. Maybe. Again, depending on your area. Some will be more, some will be less. Some of these Dallas area schools and Houston area schools, it's every single week. A lot of the more rural places, maybe once a year. It's just different. And then you go to college, and you're literally every single time, and it doesn't matter which guy it is. It could be the first string guy, the second string guy, or the third string guy. Every time that ball snaps, you're going up against the best player you played in high school. Over and over and over again for 50, 60 snaps a game. It is different. So lay off of the Arch Manning ridiculous expectations. All you other college football fans out there, y'all get off my boy Arch. He's doing it the right way. He's going to come in. He's going to learn how to play quarterback. He's going to get used to the speed of the game. And maybe in 2 or 3 years, Arch Manning's going to be the starter at the University of Texas. And hopefully we're talking about Texas making another run to the playoffs with their third quarterback. That's what hopefully we're talking about. Get off my boy Arch. So we asked the question. Well, I'll ask the question. Could this be one of the best? I said it is. I'll ask the question, though. Could this be one of the best QB rooms in the country? Absolutely it is. It is certainly top 10. It's probably top 5. You could even argue it is the best one in the country right now. And so as I was thinking about this, and I alluded to it a little earlier, how do coaches keep all these quarterbacks? Like, how come some coaches can do it and other coaches cannot? And I don't know if I know the answer. I think it's probably development, like capital. Steve Sarkisian's got it. He's developed a lot of quarterbacks that have played in the NFL. He's developed a lot of quarterbacks that have won national championships. He's developed quarterbacks that have won Heisman trophies. There aren't a lot of guys in this country, from a coaching perspective, that can bring the type of resume to the table that Steve Sarkisian can regarding quarterbacks. So I expect the quarterback recruiting for Steve Sarkisian to continue to be on fire in perpetuity until some point, unless the team just absolutely falls flat on its face and the program becomes less interesting to other types of recruits. I think you're gonna always see Texas have some of the top recruits in the country at the quarterback position. All that's left is to develop those guys and take that talent and make it produce on the field. I think Steve Sarkisian and A.J. Milwee are going to be able to do that. I'm excited about this QB room. Next show, we'll talk about the running backs. Now, let's break down these Rice Owls. Game 1, Rice Owls, September 2nd. Rice was 5-8 in 2022. They got 15 returning starters, 8 of them on offense, 7 of them on defense. The big ad in the offseason for the Rice Owls was JT Daniels, who is now at his 4th school in 5 years as a D1 quarterback. This guy started out at USC, transferred to Georgia, transferred to West Virginia, and now he's transferred to Rice. I don't even know how you do that. I don't even know how that works under the rules, but it has. The question, and JT Daniels is going to be a trivia question. In 50 years, JT Daniels will be a trivia question. He's going to be the first QB in the history of college football to lose to the same team as a starter for 3 different teams. No doubt in my mind. 2 has probably been done. 3 has never been done. If 3 has been done and you hear this, let me know who this other person is, because I might want to try to win trivia when they say who are the 2 quarterbacks that have lost to the same school at 3 different schools as a starting quarterback. Offensively, I think the passing game will be pretty good. JT Daniels he's talented. He's not nearly as talented as I think he was touted to be at a high school, but he's good. So you got JT Daniels slinging the ball to Luke McCaffrey and Brad Rosner, who between those guys had 16 touchdowns last year and 1,500 yards receiving. I think they'll be a pass happy bunch, and I think they'll be pretty good at it in 2023. Defensively, the Rice Owls are experienced up the middle and on the back end. They got 2 returning defensive tackles, 2 linebackers coming back, 3 returning defensive backs. I think defensively, their defensive backs are the strength. Jordan Dunbar, cornerback, had 10 pass breakups last year. Sean Fresh had an interception and 5 pass breakups last year at the other cornerback position. And then safety Gabe Taylor, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. So they're a pretty experienced team coming back. I don't think it's going to matter. Texas is a 5-touchdown favorite, roughly. And Texas should absolutely cover every single bit of that 5 touchdowns. You look at this game, what do we always talk about on this show? Trench warfare, right? The big guys in the middle, the big humans. There's no way that Rice can stand up to Texas's offensive and defensive line for 4 quarters. I don't think they can stand up to them for any quarters. I think Texas is going to absolutely roll in this game. I think you're looking at I think there's a good chance Texas could shut this Rice team out. But I'll give Rice 10 points. I think Texas scores in the 50s. I think most of that happens at or before halftime. I believe this will be 11 a.m. kick. I don't know if that makes a difference, just putting out the information. So there it is, Rice. Game 1. We talked on the show last week about, the keys to 2023 for Texas, and one of them is to take care of business in these out-of-conference games that aren't Alabama. Texas is coming off of a loss in the Alamo Bowl. They ought to be itching to get back on the field and kick somebody's ass, and that ass is going to be Rice's ass. Next week, we'll talk about the Bama game, what we think is going to happen in that one. Horns Traveling Roadshow. Horn Takes Traveling Roadshow is a thing we're going to do this year. We are season ticket holders for Texas football. We go to the Red River Shootout every year, for sure. We usually go to one home game every year, for sure. And this year we're going to throw in a road trip to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Already got my tickets, already got my parking pass, already got my hotel. I'm super stoked about this road trip. So what the hell is the Horn Takes Traveling Roadshow? Well, we're going to go to Tuscaloosa. We're going to go to the Red River Shootout, and then we'll be down in Austin right after Thanksgiving for the Texas Tech game, final matchup between Texas and Texas Tech for the foreseeable future. But what I would like to do is take this show on the road. We're going to do some insight into the atmosphere around the stadiums. We're going to do some interviews with fans, and I'm really excited about doing that in Tuscaloosa. Get to know some Alabama fans. I talked to a few Alabama fans at the Alabama game last year down in Austin. Good time, good people. I want to check out the tailgate scenes at these places. I want to give you guys some insight into what it's like to be at these games. So that's what the Horn Takes Traveling Roadshow is about. Alabama fans or people that go to Alabama games, your other SEC team fans. What are the things I got to do at Tuscaloosa? What do I need to go see? I need y'all to tell me. I need y'all to send me a list. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all that information. Shoot me a DM on Twitter at Horntakes. Shoot me a DM on TikTok at Horntakes. I got to know what I got to go do when I get to Tuscaloosa. So I appreciate any insight there. That's the show for today, folks. You guys have a outstanding and very safe 4th of July weekend. Hope everybody gets to spend it with their family and friends. Join us next time on From the Cheap Seats. That's this football show. We'll do some more recruiting updates. Talk about the running back room. Lots to replace there. And we'll talk about this Bama matchup and then anything else that comes up that I feel like I want to talk about on this football show from the Cheap Seats. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can check out the link at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. That's where all the podcasts go. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click on that bell. You'll get all the notifications. Find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Horntakes. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Hook 'em.